Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today I'm very pleased to announce that the Princedom of Moorland has been incorporated into the Empire of Stomaria as an observer state. So, for those who don't know, the Princedom of Moorland actually became an ally of the Empire of Stomaria about a month ago. And this was the first time that we had had an alliance with another micronation for 2 years, just shy of, I think, or maybe it was just over. I think it was around that time. And they very quickly integrated themselves into Stomaria without actually being a part of Stomaria. So Prince Alexander of Moorland, he became a Stomarian noble through our Patreon campaign, which allowed him to become a member of the Imperial Court, Stomaria's central governing body. They legalized the Stomarian stater as a form of legal tender within Moorland. So the Stomarian stater coin could be used as a medium of exchange within Moorland and when trading with Stomaria and its the micronations that make up Stomaria, the Stomarian stater would be utilized. And they also want to assist in the production or the minting of additional Stomarian stater coins. So that is also something that's very encouraging, and that's another way in which they were sort of integrating themselves into Stomaria itself. Now, I've had various video calls, phone calls, and obviously messages and emails with Prince Alexander since then. He is sort of very enthusiastic about all this. In terms of micronationalism, in terms of Stomaria itself, in terms of what they can offer and what we can offer them. And I had a suspicion that eventually it would lead to this point, only because they ticked every box that was required to become an observer state. The only reason that they didn't pull the trigger, or the only reason that I thought they didn't pull the trigger, is because part of our criteria in a micronation joining Stomaria is that they cannot have formal relations with micronations outside of Stomaria. I have gone over this before in a previous video, but the easiest way to describe it is because we are a federal monarchy. The foreign policy is nevertheless dictated by Stomaria's central governing body. So the foreign policy, so alliances, mutual recognition treaties, trade agreements, whatever else with micronations outside of Stomaria are prohibited if you want to become a part of Stomaria, because we need to control that the foreign policy. We need to control the way in which Stomaria and the micronations that comprise Stomaria act towards other micronations. There needs to be a semblance of unity there, and that's a big part of it. And I gave the example before where it would be the equivalent of Canada having its own trade agreement with, sorry, got that the wrong way around. It would be the equivalent of California or Texas having their own trade agreements or foreign relations programs with various other nation states around the world. And so it just wouldn't make sense for us to go down that route. But it turns out that the Princedom of Moorland, despite having various mutual recognition treaties with other micronations, some of those were null and void anyway, and the ones that weren't, they hadn't had any contact with those micronations since having that mutual recognition treaty, which is a big reason why I think mutual recognition treaties are a complete waste of time. But I have gone over that in some detail before. So with that sort of last barrier, that last obstacle out of the way, if you like, it was relatively easy to integrate Moorland into Stomaria because nothing has really changed. They've simply decided that rather than being on the outside, they'd rather be on the inside. And so that's where we're at the moment with it. We have had conversations which started while they were an ally and are now finalising now that they're a part of Stomaria itself, where Moorland is actually going to be allocated a certain number of hens, which are being kept at the Kingdom of Wayward. Now, Prince Alexander actually became a Waywoodian noble as well as a Stomarian noble. It's his way of effectively funding Stomaria and Wayward and showing that his support for both micronations as individuals, but obviously both micronations being part of the same empire. And as a gesture, as a way of saying thank you, Wayward has allocated several hens to Moorland, and the proceeds raised from the sale of the eggs will be allocated to Moorland as and when they, request it. But as of this moment in time, the plan is for all the flocks at Wayward to generate revenue for Stomaria, and then that will be allocated towards the production of Stomarian staters. Now, this is something that Prince Alexander is also happy to do, but we have put the caveat in there that if the funds are required for Moorland, for whatever reason, then he simply has to request it. So a certain amount of funds have been allocated, a percentage of the funds have been allocated to Moorland, so at any point they can sort of dip into that and take what they need. But that's just sort of another way in which genuine micronational cooperation can happen. Wayward is great as a micronation, because without it much of this couldn't happen. But because they have that, because they're an associated state as opposed to an observer state, it means they have private freehold land that they've allocated to Stomaria, and that means we can utilize it. And this is exactly what we're doing now, utilizing the land to raise livestock, and that livestock is being used to fund the production of Stomarian staters. It's being used to reward those who involve themselves with Wayward and Stomaria at large. It's a means of, building an economy. It's a means of being able to build a real-world community. And, all of these micronations coming together, not just Wayward and Moorland and the Kingdom of Norwich, but also more recently Seleucia. It's all of these micronations coming together. And there are a few other micronations that I'm currently in talks with about forming an alliance with. As at the moment, there aren't any micronations that are looking to apply to become a part of Stomaria, but I do expect that to change relatively soon, because things seem to be just ramping up a little bit. We've gone from, having one observer state to, where we are at the moment, where, we have, Wayward as an associated state. We have now 3 observer states and no allies now. So went from having 1 ally and an observer state and associated state, and a few weeks later we now have no allies, 1 associated state and 3 observer states, with 2 potential allies in the making. But I will get onto that a little later on in another video, once more details have been ironed out and once more things have been finalised. So if you wanted to become a part of the Stomarian community, then please feel free to join us through our Patreon campaign, the link of which I shall leave in the description below as always. But otherwise, if you did enjoy this video, then please feel free to give it a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.